What's up, Mesa Falcons? It's me, it's CGB, and I'm here with Simo. Hi. Who are you? What are you doing here?
This isn't the Shadow Realm. This isn't my normal space. What's going on here?
I don't know. Let's be honest. I didn't find you. You found me.
Yes.
The Yu-Gi-Oh community has found me.
Had to walk out of Battle City, with my dual disc and my dueling glove on, and I'm like, you know what? We're gonna venture into uncharted territory, into the realm of wizards and spell slinging. I don't know what your lore is about. I'll be honest, but I thought this would be a good time. Yeah.
Quietly in the background, I've been waging a war on Yu-Gi-Oh players. Just little barbs, little disses here and there. Raren's had me on video where I didn't even know I was competing with Yu-Gi-Oh players, but every time he told me, I was like, oh, I have to win. They'll kick me out of Magic if I can't compete with a Yu-Gi-Oh player. But now the Yu-Gi-Oh community, your channel devoted to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, and your people have found me, and it's now one-on-one. We made a video for you. I looked at Yu-Gi-Oh cards for the first time in my life. Mm-hmm. Are you ready? Are you ready to see Magic the Gathering cards?
I am. I think my knowledge of Magic is a bit better than your initial knowledge of Yu-Gi-Oh, but I still don't know really much, if anything, to be honest. So I'm curious to see how this one's going to go. This is going to be fun.
All right. I've grabbed a collection of Magic cards that you've probably never seen before.
Okay.
And you are going to have 3 ratings that you can give to a card. Okay. All right. Rating number 1, bad.
Okay.
Self-explanatory. Rating number 2, good. Rating number 3, busted.
Okay. Simple enough.
Good. Yep. Good, bad, busted. Bad, good, busted. Something like that. And if you want extra credit on a card that you rate as busted, you can tell me if you want a bonus point whether or not you think it got banned. So
okay. Sure.
We're recording this right after I recorded your video, and I found out a lot. I found out that Yu-Gi-Oh bans cards to basically rotate them, which is still totally mind-blowing to me. I would say that bans in Magic are less common because most of what we're looking at are formats that rotate, right? Okay. And on rotation, which is about every 2 but now 3 years for Standard, the format I play the most, those cards are no longer legal in Standard. Standard is typically the most popular format for competitive 1v1 play. So every card has a shelf life. So keep that in mind.
Sure.
And a lot of whether or not a card gets banned, and the reason less cards get banned is because most things are tolerable for a period of time. So for a card to get banned in Magic, it has to ruin a format to the point that they don't even want it around for that limited period of time.
Sure. So it really takes a lot for Standard Magic specifically for cards to get banned, because if something's problematic enough, they might just say, oh, this is going to rotate out in like a couple weeks or something. So like you just deal with it and then we'll move on, right?
100%.
Okay.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, they're very different from Yu-Gi-Oh. Very different from Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yep. There are eternal formats, which are formats that don't rotate, and some of those are modern. And Magic does now have this interesting habit of printing cards specifically for those formats. So inserting cards into it that skip Standard entirely. Those are generally higher power level. I will let you know with each card if you are dealing with a card that got printed directly into, say, modern.
Okay.
Or directly into a format. There are cards printed specifically for Commander as well. I'll let you know if that's the case. If I don't say that, assume each card is for Standard and that
Understood.
It will be around for about 2 to 3 years. And on that note, I am very curious what you think of a few of these absolute beauties we've got coming up here.
All right.
So here is number 1. And because I like to throw you for a loop, this one got printed directly into Modern.
Okay. I'm glad we're starting off strong. For context, for anyone watching this who hasn't watched the video on my channel with CGB, I started him off with a vanilla. I started him off with a no effect monster to throw him an easy one. And this is what you're starting me with, really? I can't even pronounce. I thought Yu-Gi-Oh had awful names. Like this might be worse than a Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'm surprised this isn't a Yu-Gi-Oh card's name, to be honest. Okay.
I thought you'd be comfortable with these.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. All right.
Come on.
Asmarana Koldakar. Okay, not saying that again. For the record.
Not your worst. Asmaranda Martica Diced Koldakar. What's the problem?
I like how you just say it like off the cuff. Like every Magic player knows how to pronounce that. Like it's second nature. Okay. You know what? This is just giving me fodder for next video when you and I do something. Just remember that. Just remember that. Okay.
I know what I'm getting into.
You already know what you're getting into because we already filmed my video. Anyway, that's off topic. Legendary creature, human wizard. Mm-hmm. So remind me, I believe a legendary creature means only one of this can exist on the battlefield, but I believe one per player, right? So like yes. I can have one and you can have one?
Yes.
Okay.
Fully correct.
Okay.
See, human wizard. Know Magic.
So for context for people who don't know, I know the basics about Magic. I know like some of just the fundamental ways of how it works. Like CGB said, like there's I went to like a pre-release one time because some of like the only things I really know are like original Ravnica, and even then I've probably repressed most of that. But I remember like seeing ads for original Ravnica on like Adult Swim. Because Ravnica was like this big deal. And so then I think it was when they did a return to Ravnica, there was like some pre-release and I'm like, oh, this would be cool. Cause I remember that from my childhood. I had a friend who played and he was the one who like showed it to me. So that's like really all I know about Magic for the most part. Okay. So human wizard, it is a 3/3. I realized there was no cost on this. I just realized.
Yeah. That's why you should be totally comfortable with it as a Yu-Gi-Oh player.
Thanks. I guess you're not wrong in that respect. Maybe there'll be a trend in this episode of cards with no cost. Anyway, as long as you've discarded a card this turn, you may pay black or red, I think that looks like, to cast this spell. When this enters the battlefield, I'm not saying it again, you may search your library for a card named the Underworld Cookbook, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle, and then sacrifice 2 foods. Target creature deals 6 damage to itself. Okay, do I get to know what the Underworld Cookbook is, or is that irrelevant for my analysis of this card?
I wasn't going to show it to you, but I guess.
Oh, how kind of you. You're so generous. Okay, the Underworld Cookbook. This is 1 mana. This does have a cost, so this is not a Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's an artifact, which I believe that just means you play it, and it just sticks on the field until something does something to it. Tap, discard a card, create a food token. Food token is an artifact with a cost of 2. Tap it, sacrifice it, you gain 3 life. Okay. 4 mana, and tap this. Sacrifice the Underworld Cookbook. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. You have to go through all those steps just to get one guy back from your graveyard to your hand. That's so much effort. Just play Yu-Gi-Oh! We can do that, like, easily.
I believe it.
Yeah.
To be fair, there's a lot of Magic cards that also do it for much less effort, to be fair.
Fair. I guess like that's maybe not the reason you're actually playing this. You might just be playing it just to discard a card to make food, for all I know. But let's go back to the chef here, who's putting a scorpion...
Asmaranda Diced Koldakar?
Thank you. Who's putting a scorpion in the cake, it looks like. That is not appetizing, but this looks like the Underworld Cook, based off the cookbook. Okay, so let me break this down one by one. So as long as you've discarded, you can pay 1 of either black or red to play this. So there are plenty of ways, I imagine, in Magic that you could discard cards to fulfill that cost. You probably have to pay mana to do that, but the fact that you only have to pay 1 to cast this seems pretty good. That seems pretty good. I mean, especially just going based off the stats, like 1 mana for a 3/3, sure, why not? You get to add the Underworld Cookbook to your hand. It doesn't go immediately into play, so you do still have to pay 1 extra. But if you went like some effect, discard a card, then you pay a black or red, you play this, and then you get the cookbook. And then the cookbook also costs 1, you put that into play. That's conveniently enough also a card that you can use to discard a card to trigger this, to get this out into play. Then you sacrifice 2 foods, which it seems like the foods are made off of the cookbook. I'm sure there's a myriad of other ways to do that. And target creature deals 6 damage to itself. It's interesting, like, the way that that's worded, that it does 6 damage to itself versus, like, this card does 6 damage to it. I get it because it's like flavorful with like what's going on in the art here, right?
It got poisoned. It
got poisoned. It ate the scorpion. It ate the scorpion. Yeah, and now it's getting eaten from the inside out by the scorpion. So it's flavorful in that regard. I'm not sure if semantically, like the target dealing the 6 damage to itself rather than this card dealing 6 damage to it is relevant. I am sure it could be in some way. And you said this got directly printed into Modern?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And from my understanding, the power level of Modern is quite a bit higher than Standard because it's a semi-eternal format in ways.
It's definitely closer to something like where Yu-Gi-Oh! You said things just don't rotate, so like the power creep just kind of keeps happening. Modern is definitely in that world, and the cards printed. It wouldn't make sense for Wizards to make a set full of cards from Modern if none of them were playable in Modern, so they have to be powerful.
I see. So for them to directly want to print this into an old format specifically, right? Because you said this wasn't printed for Standard.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. So like, as you were saying, they have to go out of their way to convince Modern players to want to play this card, is what you're saying.
Yep. They're hoping to make competitive Modern cards in theory.
Yes. So I'm trying to think of the worst thing you could possibly do with this card. It's weird because there could be some like weird. If you somehow manifest 1 billion food tokens, then you can just theoretically, there's no cost to how many times you can activate the effect of the sacrifice the 2 foods to deal 6 to something. It's not like you have to tap this to do that. So if you have 1 million foods, you could hypothetically like nuke your opponent's board.
Yep.
You can't kill them with that. And that also requires you to jump through a bunch of hoops to get to that in the first place. For Modern, I feel like this would be more of like a Commander card than a Modern card. I feel like in Commander, you could, no pun intended, cook with this more. Because you have like, first of all, you have like more opponents that you have to play against, right? And then on top of it, you have more time to sort of like get in a position to like start pulling stuff like this off. If Modern is more akin to Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of like the speed at which the game is played, yes, you only have to pay 1 to play this. Is this like the best thing you could be doing in Modern? I don't know. I feel like best case scenario, this is part of some like gimmicky combo. Which is why I feel like it's more of a Commander card, because that's like what Commander's all about, is like just doing your fun thing and never
out of curiosity, have you played a game of Commander?
I have.
Oh, okay.
I've played like for context.
Experienced Commander player.
I played like 2 for context.
Yeah,
it's not
many. Who was your commander?
Whatever one of the pre-con decks had. I think it was. Who was it?
On the spot.
Like some vampire card, I think.
Yeah.
He's like
some blood tokens.
I don't think he makes
some blood minions.
No, that might have been what my wife was playing. What was I playing? I think it was like some book or something, like some tome card.
Prosper Tomebound?
Oh, that sounds like it. Yeah, is that a card? Is that a real card?
Did you make treasure tokens and
that sounds familiar.
Stuff
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah.
Got there. All right. Okay. You're a Prosper player. Well, these are your colors.
These are the colors, yeah, because I was going to say, these are red and black. Yeah.
Nice.
So I have to pick if this is bad, good, or busted. I don't think this is bad. I don't know if it's busted, though. It could be a busted combo enabler with 0 context going into this. So if I'm wrong there, that's fine, because I don't know if I have the context to figure out how busted this is. Like I said, if it is busted, it's probably like Commander or something. But it could also be Modern. Who knows? I think this card is like fine. I think it's okay. I think there's like some gimmick you do with this card that makes it good?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm gonna rest. Final answer. I think it's good.
Are you ready for me to blow your mind?
Oh, this sounds familiar.
No, you're actually right on. This card is good. This card is good. It is not really busted. When it first came out, the hype on Asmo, as it's normally referred to, is,
oh, you could have just told me that. Thanks.
You're welcome. The hype around Asmo was very high, and early on when this card came out, it got play in some very powerful decks. The rate was insane. There were a lot of different ways to discard a card that didn't actually punish you very much. There were ways to even do it for free. You know, there were cards that, quote, for free would let you discard a card to draw a card. Like I'm thinking of a card named Street Wraith, for those wondering what I'm talking about.
We like free. We like free.
Yeah. I mean, free's really good. So the idea of this being a 1-mana 3/3 that got you a replacement card for whatever you discarded in the cookbook, and the cookbook would someday do something. It's all very good text. It's all a nice pile of value. It is hard to always leverage it into a game-ending effect, right? Because like you said, even if you have infinite foods, all you did was nuke your opponent's board. There's a lot of cards in Magic that are just like, pay this cost, nuke opponent's board.
Right.
So that's not an insane thing in Magic, although it is very strong. So as Asmo is a good card, at times has been feared to be a great and busted card, but has not been banned and is kind of just a niche card in the modern format as opposed to a dominant one.
It has the makings. It has the makings.
Yep. It's got a lot of text. I wanted to see how you handled a lot of text.
I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I'm used to a lot of text.
Yeah. It's good to see you warmed up. And I also just really love hearing people say the name.
Of course.
I'm a monster like that. Let me give you a break here. Take a little breather.
Oh, you're such a pal. Okay. Royal Assassin. I'm just going to say for the record, you complained about Yu-Gi-Oh cards being illegible. I don't know what this black text on black border we've got going on here, but anyway.
It's called Revenge.
That's fair. I already have my glasses on, though, so I can thankfully read this. Okay. Royal Assassin is 1 and 2 black. Tap to destroy any tapped creature. And it is a 1/1. So this looks like a very old card. I did not play Magic when cards looked like this, for context. So this just looks ancient. When was this released, out of curiosity?
Oh, this image is from a little set called Revise that came out in 1995 when I started playing.
Good. This card is almost as old as I am. Fantastic.
There you go. This card was reprinted as recently as this year in an Assassin's Creed set.
How fitting. Okay. So I have a question. When I'm evaluating if this card is bad, good, or busted, am I looking at this in a vacuum, or am I looking at this like by current current setting? Like, what am I evaluating this on here?
So the way I decided is if I showed this to 100 Magic players, what do I think a consensus would say?
Okay, sure. So this is tap to destroy any tapped creature. Now, you're going to have to remind me here. I cannot just play Royal Assassin for 3 and immediately tap it because it has Summon Sickness, correct?
You are correct.
Okay. Why would you show me this? Because I feel like, granted, this is an old card, but I feel like for 3 mana and being in black, which I feel like black is the color that destroys things, I feel like I could be playing a handful of other removal cards that may not necessarily be a creature that can destroy things, and I don't have to wait a turn to do it. That said, however, because it's a creature, because it sticks around, if there is some sort of mechanic, I guess, you could leverage to tap and untap and tap and untap the Royal Assassin, then all of a sudden you have like some fun stuff you could do there. It seems so slow. Like, you have to hope. I'm granted in Magic, the way your combat works is different, because if you attack, I can choose whether or not I want to block. So I guess that's something I have to consider, because in Yu-Gi-Oh, if I play Royal, or if you play Royal Assassin and I see that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to play something and just attack over your Royal Assassin. But in Magic, I can't do that. So that actually is
yeah, that's right. And any creatures that you tap to attack, the Royal Assassin can be like, you die and don't deal any damage.
Right. But conversely, this only destroys tapped creatures. So if you play a Royal Assassin, I could just play creatures and not tap them until I feel like I'm ready to either deal with the assassin or have a way to remove the assassin so my guys can attack freely.
Yep, that follows.
I think this is bad. I don't think this is very good. And I'll happily be wrong here. I guess if there's other cards that have like tap-based effects, because they don't have to attack. They could be like, you know, tap to do whatever, right? Tap to draw a card, tap to whatever. So then this thing could then during your turn, tap to destroy it too.
You think if I showed this to 100 Magic players, most of them would say it's bad?
It just seems so slow. I just feel like you could just be doing this at such a faster rate. But then you said they reprinted this in the Assassin's Creed thing. And would they reprint a bad card in the Assassin's Creed thing?
Oh, I don't know. Would they?
I mean, I guess it just has
assassin.
It has assassin in the name, so like they could have just done it for that reason, just for flavor.
It's time, man. Final answer.
It is time. Final answer. I don't think it's very good. I'll happily be wrong on this. My Yu-Gi-Oh brain thinks this is way too slow to be good, so I'll happily be wrong. Final answer.
I showed this to you because it was my favorite card as a kid, and it totally scammed 12-year-old me, and I wanted to know if you were smarter than 12-year-old me, and you are. It is a bad card. You even saw through the Assassin's Creed thing because of the flavor. If I had just told you it was reprinted this year, you'd probably be like, But no, I threw in the Assassin's Creed thing for fun.
That's funny. The mind games have already begun, and we've barely worked together. I can't wait.
They sure have. They sure have. Yes, there are maybe there are other ways to deal with minions, creatures, monsters, whatever you want to call them. So we'll show you a few more.
Why was this your favorite card, out of curiosity?
Because I read it and I was like, it's going to kill everything. Like, how do you beat that? What do you do? So back then, when card games were new, we did have a lot of understanding of like how games would progress.
Right.
And nowadays the flow of a card game is mostly known, right? You play some stuff, I play some stuff. I remove your important thing. You don't have removal for my important thing. Attack, you die. Back then, the idea of you put this out there and the game that we understood was like, okay, I guess I have the right colors to play this 2/2 creature, this 2/2 gray ogre, and I guess I'll attack you with it because I have nothing else to do because none of my lands work with my hand. And they're like, tap my Royal Assassin, kill it. It's like, oh, wait, that stays around? Wait, I can never win. It's impossible.
That's so funny.
So yeah, back in the day, like people were like, how do you beat this when card games were very new? And obviously people figured it out. But when young me was just like, it's a monster. It's what are you ever gonna do?
The art is
impossible to beat.
I'll give it that. The art's really cool.
Yeah, he's grooving. He's a happy, groovy assassin. Let's get back to reading text on cards, shall we? That one had too little text to fool you. Let's see how this one does.
That's true. Oh my god. Okay. Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. All right. This is 15 mana. I imagine we are not actually playing 15 lands to summon this, but I will reserve judgment until we get there. It's another legendary creature, which is an Eldrazi. It's also a 15/15. I would hope so for 15 mana. This spell can't be countered. I would hope so for 15 mana. When you cast this spell, take an extra turn after this one. I would hope so for paying 15 mana. Flying.
You expect a lot for paying costs, I'm noticing.
Is
this a Yu-Gi-Oh thing?
This is a Yu-Gi-Oh problem. Yeah, if I'm going through this many hoops, this card better win me the game automatically. Anyway, flying, which if I recall flying is just it. You can like attack over your opponent's things and like they can't block you, right? Unless they have flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Protection from spells that are one or more colors. Interesting. So like multicolored spells, I guess.
Pretty much. One or more means if it's a monocolored spell.
Oh, one or more. Yes. Basically everything.
Nearly all spells. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then Annihilator 6. What is Annihilator? I'm not familiar with that keyword.
Annihilator means that when an opponent becomes attacked by this card, they have to sacrifice permanents equal to the Annihilator number.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, this doesn't have haste, so obviously, well, you get an extra turn, so kind of basically as haste. I attack with this, and then before damage or anything, the Annihilator triggers, and my opponent has to, like, sacrifice 6 cards they control.
Yeah.
Oh, that's insane. Okay. It's just a control, right? What about their hand? Or is the hand not in play here?
Annihilator has to be a permanent on the battlefield.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Does that
Lands,
count?
creatures, artifacts, enchantments, tokens they generate are permanents.
So lands are also counted in Annihilator then?
Yes, they are.
That is horrific. Okay. When Emrakul the Aeon's Torn is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles their graveyard into their library. Interesting. Okay. So for 15 mana, that seems kind of crazy. Like I said, I guess there's no like mana reducing effect here, so I guess you do have to get to 15. I imagine there are cards that just let you like ramp into this so that you can, whether it's other lands being ramped into, or if there's like a guy that says like gain 2 mana by tapping it or something like that. Something like that. Because I doubt the game is ever going to go long enough that you're going to get to 15 lands naturally. That seems like it would never happen. But I could be wrong. I am used to Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the game is over on turn 2, essentially. So, bit of a warped perspective there. So you play this. You get an extra turn. They can't stop this because it can't be countered unless there's some way to counter it otherwise that I'm not aware of. You get an extra turn. Then this thing can attack effectively because you get an extra turn. You get to draw a card again, I assume, because if you're taking a whole extra turn. So one thing that's interesting about this is that Yu-Gi-Oh!, as far as I know, and I feel like I know a lot about this game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Does not have a card that lets you take an extra turn, if you can believe that.
I do. I have now seen what your turns are like.
Yeah. I think the closest we have to something like this is that there's a card that I believe gives you a second battle phase after you take a battle phase, but I don't think there's a card that gives you an entire extra turn, which I think in Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be insane if they ever did make that. But I guess there's still room there for them to do that. So the fact that, like, you guys have an ability like this as a Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, to me, is insane. Like, that's just, like, unbelievable that that's even allowed. But the game is, I guess, slower because you have lands and stuff, too. And this thing costs 15 mana on top of it.
It's a little bit.
I'm trying to think, like, what turn you would actually play something like this. If you're playing a land a turn for 7 turns, or 8 turns, then you have like 8. You're like halfway there. So you have to
on
have
a prayer.
How many other cards would you need to have that give you more mana in addition to the mana you already have? I think for me right now, like, this effect is insane. Like, this effect is absolutely ridiculous. But I think what's tough for me is, like, can you actually get to the 15 mana reliably enough? And, like, what does the rest of your... Like, I guess, could you design a deck, and I'm just talking out loud here, could you design a deck that allows you to get to 15 mana consistently and also see this card consistently, that this is, like, your win condition, and if you play this card, like, you win the game? Because your opponent has 20 health, ideally. you play this, turn skip, this can attack, it has flying, so your opponent most likely won't be able to do anything about it. You hit them for the face for 15. Is that living in Disneyland? Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to sound like Raren now as I'm saying these things. Clearly, we've been doing too much together.
Clearly.
This is tough. It's a really cool card. I'll give it that. I feel like if you play this card, you win the game basically on the spot. Or put yourself in such an advantageous position that you would basically have to be on no life and your opponent just has like one card that can just like lethal you without having to interact with this. Like some sort of like direct damage card when your life is already really low. That's the only thing I can think of, like how you just don't win if this card gets played. 15. And you didn't say like modern or anything. This is like in standard. Like if you ask 100 Magic players if they say this card is good.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad. I
wasn't one of the options. Commit.
I don't feel like I know enough about Magic to know how reliably and consistently you can get to 15 mana to play this. And then at that point, is this the best thing you could be doing if you can ramp yourself to 15 mana like that reliably? So I'm going to say this card is good, but I won't be surprised if this card is like batshit fucking crazy. Final answer.
Okay, good. If I asked 100 Magic players if they thought Emrakul the Aeon's Torn was good, bad, or busted, and I have some experience with this recently because of a different video I did make with Raren.
That's funny.
We were reacting to cards that got banned in Commander. And we were talking about this card because it is banned in Commander, an eternal format. And we were talking about, we didn't think this needed to be banned because 15 is so much. And man, did I learn something that day about Magic players, because the comments lit us up. They're like, 15 mana is nothing. It's so easy to get 15 mana. This card is just game over on turn 3 every time. And I will tell you straight up, I read their comments. I still don't get it. Still don't.
Great. We'll reignite the comments in this video then. Fantastic.
I still don't. Spell it out for me. Spell me out a curve. If you're in the comments, spell me out your curve in Commander that gets Emrakul the Aeon's Torn to 15 mana in a game of Commander at an unreasonable pace. Okay.
So you agree with me then?
So you agree with me? It. But this card, I've never played this card, because it's been banned the entire time I've owned one.
That's insane.
And so it's still very much a question mark in my heart of what this card is. Now, this card in Standard, I think that when they made this card, they were basically seeing how much win the game could we put on a card and what would be the cost for that, right?
Sure.
And that is like they were going for the ceiling and seeing what would happen. And Emrakul, like, my God, like there are so many things about it that are just funny. Like, why does it have to be a 15-15 too? The effect alone is going to win the game. You get 20 life in Magic. Why do you need, why? It could be a 10-10, you know, and it would hit in two turns. It's obviously done. But why? Like, there's so much about it but why? Not only that, this spell can't be countered. When you cast the spell, take an extra turn. The extra turn effect goes on the stack when you cast this. If you countered Emrakul, say this card could be countered. If you countered Emrakul, you still get the extra turn.
Really? That's how it works in Magic?
Yeah, that's how the stack works. So why can't it be countered? Like, it would still be busted.
That's so interesting that you say that, because like in Yu-Gi-Oh, I feel like it wouldn't work that way. So that's so fascinating. Oh my God. Okay.
So Standard, from what I can tell, searching using MTG Top 8, I never found a Standard deck that like abused this. And if anybody wants to leave me a comment on that, go ahead. I was not playing the game while this was in Standard.
Interesting.
In Modern/Legacy, you got a card that basically let you cheat this onto the field for 5 mana and
Oh,
attack
good.
with it immediately.
Oh, fantastic.
So it became a piece of an absolutely insane combo deck in those formats.
Sure.
And that is, I think, to my knowledge, is 100% still legal, which I think is totally fine. It's a combo deck that really relies on this enabler and this insane payoff that otherwise is uncastable. The deck will never make 15 mana. It's impossible.
See, it's funny because when you put it in the context of Commander, I could see that more than anything else that you've just described to me, because I feel like, again, I don't really know the speed or pace of these formats relative to anything, but I kind of like understand Commander, and I've watched like an episode of Game Nights or two, and I've seen that sometimes just in Commander things just get really out of hand, and so like for Commander, especially because the games take so long sometimes, that makes sense to me. But for like actual one-on-one typical standard / modern Magic, this just seems like a pipe dream. So I like I said, I don't think the card's bad. I just think if you're living on a prayer if you think this is consistent enough to be reliably good. But okay, like sure. Yeah.
I can go off the comments on my video that I did not expect. They think this card is busted. That's 100% busted. And I want to be clear. I am aware that ramp is very good in Commander. I fully accept that on turn 4, a deck that is ramping can be making 8 to 10 mana. It's still not 15.
Yeah. 15 just seems like such an absurd
15
number.
is crazy. Anyway, I'm glad. I think that most Magic players are saying this is busted, and I'm like, can we just unban it so I can find out? I want to fuck around and find out so much. I'm not gonna lie to you. I can't lie.
Cool card though. Like it's a cool card.
Oh, it's the top. Like they really tried to make a card that was the top. You showed me some Timmy cards not that long ago for the video on Yu-Gi-Oh. Well, here's a Timmy card. You can see why I was modestly impressed. All right, let's read this beast.
Is it really a Timmy card, though, if it's, like, actually good? I guess that's a debatable question. Anyway. All right. What do we got here? Jace Vrins? Vrins? We'll go with Vrins.
Is fine.
Okay. Vrins Prodigy. It's 1 and a blue for an 0/2. That's not looking too good to start, but we'll see what the effect says. Another legendary. We're on the theme of legendaries this video. Tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So you get to cycle. If there are 5 or more cards in your graveyard, exile Jace Vrins Prodigy, then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. Okay, I assume that's the second card here. How does this work? Is this just like on the back of the card?
Yeah, it's
cool.
a flip card.
That's neat.
Yep.
So now we have Jace Telepath Unbound. Sick art for this card. It is a planeswalker. I do know what planeswalkers are. In term like functionally, but I've never seen this card before. So this has I do not remember what they are called.
You can call it a +1. It's a loyalty ability.
Loyalty, yeah. I was gonna say he has 5 things, but it's loyalty. Yes, 5 loyalty. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. And to clarify how loyalty works, this can't like attack or anything. It kind of just like stays there, but like you can choose to attack it. This is like the one thing in Magic you can deliberately choose to attack, right?
Yes. Your opponent, when declaring an attack, can choose to attack you, their opponent, or Jace, their planeswalker.
Right. And could you hypothetically block that attack going into Jace then?
Yep.
If you wanted to? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to clarify that. Cool. So called it a loyalty ability. So loyalty ability, the first one, +1, up to 1 target creature gets -2/-0 until your next turn. That's okay. Let me read the rest of these before I evaluate. -3, you may cast target instant. God, you're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh cards having small text. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So to clarify that, do you still have to pay the cost for that card?
Yes, you do.
Okay, that kind of sucks, but that's okay.
Paying cost does in fact suck for a Yu-Gi-Oh player.
It does. Yes. I just want to play Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, for 0 cost. That's really what I want to do. -9. Okay. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, target opponent puts the top 5 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Now, to clarify another thing too, a spell in Magic is just anything that's not a land, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's different in that sense. So I just want to clarify that. Because like in Yu-Gi-Oh, creatures would not be spells.
Yep.
So.
In Hearthstone, minions are not spells, which never trips me up in a video ever.
That's why we have to clarify these things. Okay. So this is interesting. Let me start with the front side of Jace here. So the draw card, discard a card for tapping. This is such a weird effect because like in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I mentioned this to you when we filmed our video together, Yu-Gi-Oh, drawing cards for one thing or getting like +1s off of card draw is already like quite rare. And granted in Modern there's some asterisks there, but like for the most part, the cards are the resource. There's no mana. And so because of that, like any single extra card you get is good. And like filtering cards isn't even really like a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh all that much. It's there's off the top of my head, I can't really think of many cards that say like draw a card, discard a card.
Well, yeah, you put cards in your deck because you can and want to play them. Here we have to have the right mix of mana to play our cards. So we gotta filter, or else we just sit there doing nothing sometimes, and it sucks.
See, that just doesn't sound fun though. Like you're shitting on Yu-Gi-Oh, and that just doesn't sound fun anyway. We'll get to that later. So being able to like, what I see this here is that you're gonna play this on turn 2 because this is a 2-cost card. So you play this on turn 2. Turn 3 comes around. You draw a card for turn. It's like you get to draw 2 cards a turn, but then you're discarding 1. You're discarding the worst card in your hand. And that alone is very powerful, I feel like. Like, if Yu-Gi-Oh! Had something that said, like, get an extra draw, even though if you had to discard it, that would, like, depending on the context, I still think, like, that would be a pretty good card, all things considered, because you get to see more cards, and that's good. So I think, like, just alone, this front side of Jace is actually just quite good, because, hypothetically, you could just never block any of your opponent's creatures with this, and just each turn, you effectively get to filter, like, 2 cards deeper into your deck if you count your draw phase on top of it. So that seems good. The Planeswalker side, though, I don't know if I'm fully sold on the Planeswalker side. The reason for that is +1, target creature gets -2/-0 until the end of the turn. That's a free ability. And you obviously are trying to get to like the -9, I'd imagine. In Yu-Gi-Oh, cards, even if they're free, cards that like reduce your opponent's attack stat, especially by modern standards, are not very good. In older Yu-Gi-Oh, I would say that something like that would be a bit more valuable, but even then, they weren't like fantastic. They'd have to be like very situational in terms of like how good they would be. So that doesn't like, that's kind of like a whatever effect. And it sucks that that's like the +1 effect, because if you're trying to get for the -9, that's like whatever. The -3, saying you get to target an instant or sorcery, use it, and then it gets exiled. You still have to pay the cost for it. That could be okay, depending on the card, because if you're playing this on turn 2, let's say a couple turns go by, turn 3, turn 4, you've cycled a bunch of cards, so you have a few cards in the graveyard, you flip this guy over, then maybe you've used some other spell on turn 3 or turn 4, maybe turn 5, and maybe you want to get that back again, and it's like a free card at that point. It's like free value. Cool. That's fine. I think it depends on the value of the cards that you're potentially able to reuse with that effect. And then the -9 is like mill. That good of a strategy in Magic? This is something I'm like super unfamiliar with. Mill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Historically has never been particularly good.
I'm the wrong person to ask because I've won a lot of games with mill.
Okay. Okay. And that could either be, deceiving me or baiting me, Let me think about this. It has to go 5 cards? 5 or more cards in your graveyard to flip this over. Okay. So you activate this. It's going to take you, because you can only activate 1 loyalty ability per turn, correct?
Correct.
it's going to take you 4 turns before you can even do that?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem good. I mean, I guess if you're playing like Control, maybe. If you can make the game go on that long, but God. That seems... If you're playing some sort of control deck that you can make the game devolve into this glacially paced slog and make your opponent want to just flip the table on you, then, like, I guess the -9 is great. You might not have friends after that, but, you know. I feel like...
Control mages don't need friends.
I don't think this card is bad. I think the ability to see 2 cards a turn with the front side of this is actually really good. I think that's an exceptionally good effect. Especially because you can do it so early on in the game. It only costs 2. If that costs like 3 or 4, I would say that's infinitely worse. But the fact it costs 2, you can start doing that on your 3rd turn. That's great. I hate the +1. I think the -3 is good. I feel like you're probably going to build a deck that you play cards that you want to recast, and especially since you would just get them for free, it's like you just have an extra card. So it's free value at that point. So I think that's good. I think the -9, again, unless you're playing a type of deck that really just feeds off of the fact that you're just making your opponent not play the game, that's like your win condition, I feel like. Is that likely to come up? That seems like a pipe dream. I'd have to know like the pace at which the game goes. I'm going to say this is a good card. I don't think this was busted. I think this was a good card. I fail to see this card being bad. So final answer.
If you asked 100 Magic players what they would say about Jace Vryn's Prodigy, I believe most of them would say it is a good card.
Yay!
Yay!
We did it.
But I do love this card for a number of reasons. A big one being when this card was revealed. Have you heard the name Jace before?
One more time?
Yeah. Have you heard the name Jace before?
I think they're... because if I recall, don't the Planeswalkers have like multiple iterations? Like
yes.
There's like another... I think I've heard of there being like another Jace. That wasn't this one. Because like when I saw the name was Jace, I'm pretty sure that I've heard of another type of Jace. I've never seen this one though.
Yeah, Jace as a character in the Magic lore is very popular. Like maybe the most popular character. Like way up there in popularity. Okay. And when this card was revealed, many people, including very good players, said it was the worst Jace ever made.
Wow. Okay.
They did. And I think it's because there's an interesting mix of text on this card. For one thing, the draw card, discard card effect is not super rare in Magic. Even though it is a good effect, like you said. But there are a lot of cards that do this effect that you wouldn't run in your deck. Like there's a lot of like 2 mana, 1/1 tap, draw a card, discard a card. Like that is a typical creature in Magic. And it's good. You don't complain about it, but you don't go out of your way to run it in a deck. It's usually not worth the slot.
Sure.
So that alone, that text didn't excite people. On top of that, like you evaluated, the +1 is slow and is generally on its own not good. The -9 is incredibly slow and, as you pointed out, not good. So I think people saw this mix of both of abilities and things that they saw as familiar things that aren't typically very good and assumed this card was bad. Within a few weeks of this card coming out and performing well in competitive play, it became the most expensive standard card of its time. It was often $100 a copy so that people could build their Jace decks.
It was $100. That's insane for you guys. Like for like a standard card. Like I know old Magic cards are really expensive, but $100 for like a current playable card seems obscene for Magic.
Yep, in 2015, a current competitive card. Yeah, that was very high at the time.
Wow.
100, yeah, for sure. So Jace actually had a really good history in Standard, and I would say it got right up to the line. I am sure some people will say it was busted, and some people will say they wanted it banned, but it never got banned, and it was always one of the best cards in a few different decks, but it was never it didn't define the format. There were better decks in the format, and the formats that Jace was legal in are often thought of for different decks that didn't even play Jace, but Jace made some of the other decks contenders. So I think it's the definition of a good card. So
why were people wrong? Because you said like how the draw a card, discard a card, and then obviously paired with the backside where he transforms into the Planeswalker. Like what I guess, why did people misevaluate this card when it was first revealed? Like, what happened?
I think they found those abilities unexciting because on their own, those abilities aren't exciting. And it is hard for the brain to kind of assess like cumulative usability, right?
Sure.
So you can look at all this, but one of the hallmarks that makes Jace very good is 5 loyalty. It's a hard planeswalker to kill. When it transforms and you use the +1 to take 2 attack off an opposing creature, it has 6 loyalty. 6 loyalty is a lot, and one of your attackers just went down 2.
Okay.
Even if they find a way to attack and kill Jace on the spot, they committed a lot of resources to killing Jace. Like, imagine if Jace, this 1 and a blue 0/2 creature, also said somewhere on it, you gain 6 life.
Sure. Okay.
Or 8 life, I guess, because you use the +1 in that case, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah, like that's a lot of life. You have 20 health points in Magic. That is what it took to like deal with a Jace that flipped. On top of that, there are other small points. It's like a buildup of a lot of small things that aren't very good on their own.
Interesting.
So like putting cards in your graveyard. Graveyards in Magic are a resource, and during this format, they were very much a resource. More cards in the graveyard could be used to cast spells that have what's called Delve, which gave you a reduction in cost for the number of cards in your graveyard. Okay. So a full graveyard was a resource. Like there were just a lot of little things that added up. By far the most commonly used mode was the -3 to cast an instant or sorcery, which was usually just a removal spell or a card draw spell to keep the game going. But it was that's a really good ability too. So
it was just super efficient, but it wasn't flashy. And so because it wasn't flashy, people were kind of like, they kind of just dismissed it.
So typical Jace planeswalkers, as you'll probably see someday, have a variety of abilities, and usually some of those abilities are highly desirable. Drawing cards or having big battlefield effects. And this Jace looked like a bunch of small abilities, but it turns out when you put them together at a low price, small abilities add up.
Yeah, cool card. Cool card.
Absolutely.
It'd be cool if Yu-Gi-Oh ever had like dual face cards. I think that'd be a neat concept for our game.
Let me give you another neat card.
Okay. Peer into the Abyss. This is some sick artwork. This is really cool. Okay. 4 mana and 3 black, which means this costs 7. That is a lot. It's a sorcery. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library. Hold on. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. Okay, so if I recall, Magic deck sizes are 60. If you're playing Commander, it's 100, I think, right?
Yes.
So let's assume you didn't mention Commander or anything. So let's assume this is standard. You are the standard guy.
Yeah, let's do standard.
You're going to draw 7 for your opening turn, so you're down to 53. This costs 7, so at minimum it's going to cost 7 turns to... Not minimum, because you could like ramp or have like cheating stuff. So let's say you have like 40 cards in your deck by the time you could conceivably play this card. I play this, I draw 20 cards from my deck to keep the number simple, and then I lose half my life. Let's assume my opponent never touched my life total. So then I go down to 10 life, and I now have 20-something cards in my hand. I mean, as someone coming from the game where drawing 2 cards is banned, drawing 20 sounds fun, but it costs 7 mana. That's a lot. I mean, if there's a way to like... So I see this 2 ways. The problem is, especially because you're playing Magic, you guys have to pay costs to play everything, and that's no fun. So even if you cast this, the problem is you draw 20 cards, and then you can't play any of them, and then you have to go to your end phase, and you have to discard a bunch of cards. So I guess you get to keep the best 7 or 8. I don't know what your max hand size is.
7
out of 20 something cards, which is fine, but you don't get to like get any value unless there's like cards that gain effects from when they're discarded. And maybe that's like the gimmick here. However, if there's a way to like cheat this card to activate it to draw a billion cards so that you're not paying 7 and that you're still able to like play a bunch of the cards that you draw, then this card seems actually just insane. Given the fact that this game has been out long enough, there's probably ways to do that. That sounds like a Commander thing if I've ever heard it. Are you doing that in Standard? I want to say no. Because I'm almost going back to like the Emrakul. It doesn't cost 15, obviously. It only costs 7.
Yeah, that's like less than half an Emrakul.
Yeah. But like, okay, you could like maybe play this on your like 3rd or 4th. But again, you can't play any of the cards. Then you just have to discard something. I mean, if the graveyard has a bunch of crazy effects, then like maybe that's like the whole thing. You play this early, draw half your deck, lose half your life. Then if you can cast a bunch of stuff from your graveyard or get some sort of crazy effects. Unless that just wins you the game on the spot. That's like the only other way I see this working. So I see this being some gimmicky combo piece. Otherwise, I think this card is bad. And so I am going to say on average, aside from being a gimmicky combo piece, I think as much as I hate to say a card that says draw 20 potentially is bad, I think this card is bad. And that's my final answer.
This card is bad.
Yay!
From a Standard perspective, this card is quite bad. You're killing it. You're absolutely killing it. Peer into the Abyss in Standard really didn't get to do anything, although it's a very exciting card. My favorite use for the card is still in a format on Arena, our digital client, called Brawl, which is like Commander, but 1v1.
Okay.
And in that format, you can use Peer into the Abyss to target your opponent, and there are various cards that make the opponent lose a life whenever they draw a card.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Yeah, it is like a 1-2 punch combo. In Commander, there are ways to like try to ramp up, cast this, draw half your deck, play a bunch of other free mana spells, and find ways to win the game.
Right.
So Commander players might say that this card is good. Nobody, I think, will say it's busted. Nobody will think it should be banned, I don't believe. And in Standard, it never really made a dent, although people got really excited about drawing half their library
right.
when it came out. So
it's a really cool card, though. It's a really neat design. It sucks it wasn't... I feel like this could be really annoying if this was good, but I feel like, yeah, it sucks that it wasn't, because it's a neat design.
Absolutely. Let's give you some more reading material.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate the
You're
reprieve.
welcome.
Oh, my God. Okay. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This is unlike a card I've ever seen before. Okay, 2 and a red, so costs 3. After this, or as this saga enters the battlefield, this is a saga, it's an enchantment. Okay. As this saga enters, and after your draw step, add a lore counter. Okay, so let me read this and then I'll ask stuff. Okay. Roman numeral 1, create a 2/2 red goblin shaman creature token with whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. Okay. Roman numeral 2, you may discard up to 2 cards. If you do, draw that many cards. Roman numeral 3, exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. And it transforms into Reflection of Kiki Jiki. This is very neat artwork because it's like shattered. It's an enchantment creature, Goblin Shaman, 2/2. 1 and tap, create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control, except it has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Okay, so I need to ask a clarifying question here. So I play Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Yep.
The lore counter, I'm assuming, means I get the effect of Roman numeral 1 that turn that I play this card.
Yes.
And then the next turns thereafter, assuming this is still out, when I draw, after my draw step, I move to Roman numeral 2. And then 3 is that. Okay, so it's almost like a I won't say it's like a planeswalker, but it's kind of like a planeswalker in enchantment in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. I know that doesn't probably equate or make sense for Magic players, but I'm going to go with that. Anyway, so I play this for 3 mana. and I get a 2/2 guy that says, whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. Is a treasure token just like what is that? Just like you get to get like a card? Does that get a mana? What is that?
Oh, it's like a little gotcha game you get to just take home and put on your mantle and no, it's an artifact. It's a token artifact that you can tap and sacrifice to create 1 mana of any color.
Okay, cool. So it just gives you an extra mana to work with. That does not have haste, though, unlike the enchantment creature on the backside here. So you can't attack with that immediately.
The enchantment creature on the backside also does not have haste. It creates a token.
Oh, it creates the token that has haste. Okay, excuse me. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not even on the backside again.
All good.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so I play this on a turn. I get a guy that doesn't do anything, but on the next turn, it'll make me a treasure token. So if I play this on turn 3, next turn comes around, it's turn 4, and then I attack. I also get a token, treasure token. So that technically gives me like 5 mana to work with. So it's sort of like ramp in that sense. Okay. And then also on that second turn, I'd get to discard 2 and draw 2 just to get some cards out of my hand. And then assuming this makes it 3 turns, I would get to get the guy on the back. So this costs 1 and you tap it, but it doesn't have haste. So I can't do that the turn that I play this because it has summoning sickness. But this lets me create a token that's a copy of another non-legendary creature. And that one does have haste. So if that one has haste, then I could use some ability. I could attack with it, and then it gets sacrificed.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot to this card. There's a lot going on here. Getting the little goblin shaman that just gives you treasures is cool. That's fun. Goblins like digging for treasure. I like getting free mana. Sure. And it's just if it attacks. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to like successfully deal damage or anything. So that's nice. Okay. And I don't have to spend that. It's just an artifact, right? I don't have to spend that immediately or anything. I can just keep it around.
Yeah, you can keep it around.
Okay. Could save that for later. Cool.
He's just a friendly little guy.
Yeah. Discarding 2 to draw 2 is, I mean, if you have 2 bad cards in your hand, just get rid of them, get 2 more. That seems fine. And then there's this guy. So the reflection... Obviously, this is difficult for me to evaluate because I have such a narrow scope of the card pool in Magic. So this is difficult. This, to me, the way this is worded, this seems like it would be some dumb combo enabler for something. This is just... I'm just getting an instinct that this is just like, if you play this, you're probably setting up that by the time this third Roman numeral resolves, that you're probably going to like win the game as a result of it. That's what I'm just getting intuition from.
You believe that making a token copy of something wins the game?
Well, when you put it like that,
I would find that very unlikely. Like, I don't know of a creature that if you had 2 of it, you win the game.
I don't know. It just feels, especially because you give it haste. Like I feel like there'd be like some. Here's what's going through my mind, right? I feel like by the time you would get the third version of this, and like another turn would have to pass because you'd have to wait to be able to even use this in the first place. I feel like there's like some dumb card that's like some 20/20 or some 25/20 or some like Emrakul type card, right? That is a non-legendary that you can just like tap this to make a copy of that has haste, and then you can like swing with that, and then like that like wins the game or something like that. I don't know. I feel like there's, and that's probably like an oversimplification, but surely I feel like there's some dumb card you can do with this that combos with it. I don't know. That seems abusable. That seems very abusable. Now you have like 4 turns to stop it from happening. So maybe it's not that good. It takes so long. You're telling me it's going to take, after 4 turns, your opponent's going to have no way to deal with that, though?
Yeah.
you have to like, I don't know like how common like enchantment removal is or creature removal. I have no idea. I feel like if you're playing this game in like a 1v1, the main way to play the game, there are surely tools to stop this from happening over the course of 4 turns. I would hope so. I'm going to give you your thumbnail picture. I'm going to say this is bad. I'm going to say this. I feel like the reason I'm going to say it's bad after hyping it up that way is because the fact that it takes 4 turns to get there. I feel like if this was in Yu-Gi-Oh, right, and this was a known quantity threat, we would play cards to deal with this so that if there was some dumb combo that this card enabled, it would never happen. So that's why I think there's just like no conceivable way that this card could actually be good in that sense. And as a result of that, if the card is bad, then it's bad anyway. So I that's where I'm going to stay. If I'm wrong, so be it. I'm going to say it's bad. Final answer.
The card, if I showed it to Magic players, I'm pretty sure a vast majority would say that the reflection of Kiki-Jiki is totally busted.
Oh, it's like
Totally
the first one I've
busted.
gotten just completely off. You were baiting me. You were baiting me.
This card is banned.
Wow.
This card was banned from Standard.
What's the combo?
Over the last year.
What's the combo?
That's the thing. So I don't think I was baiting you when I got to that, like, because there really isn't one.
Really? It's just an efficient card. It's just an efficient card.
Yes.
Okay.
It's so there are a lot of cool things you can copy using the reflection of Kiki-Jiki if you get to that point.
Okay.
I 100% agree that it is very telegraphed and nearly every deck has a way to deal with it. And it's definitely known that if you don't kill it by then yeah, you're probably going to lose to something. But there was nothing that it copied that was like on the spot, the game's over. It was all just like nice to have 2 of this thing. It
so
was
it's like
just
Jace
a rate
in
monster. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The coolest thing you could do with it, and this happened in 1 out of every 100 Kiki-Jiki games, if you get 2 of these flipped, you can copy the copy to make a token copy with haste, and then spend another mana to copy the copy, and another mana to copy the token, and another mana to copy the token. And because of the timing rules, you could do all this in your opponent's end step. And because they sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step, since you're already in an end step, you then untap with all these copies, and you can attack with like 10 2/2s. That is ridiculous. It happened very rarely. When it did, you felt like a god, and that was nice. But Reflection of Kiki-Jiki was a card that when the Sedatin Kamigawa Neon Dynasty was previewed, there were a ton of these new sagas. A lot of them. And they were pretty new at the time, right?
Okay.
So a lot of people had a lot of hype for various sagas. This one was not hyped at all. I don't think I read a review by anybody saying that this was an exciting card, that this could be a busted card, that this might get banned someday. I read nothing like that of any kind. And when the set came out, I didn't see one of these cards played on Ladder on Arena for over a month. And then there was a competitive event that wasn't even in Standard. It was in a different format called Alchemy, which is a whole other can of worms to talk about. But this card was legal in Alchemy, and it was being played a ton. And then next thing you know, they're playing it in Standard. And the next thing you know, they're playing it in Pioneer and Explorer, which are other formats that are bigger than Standard, where this card is also busted. And this card did get banned in Standard because it's just too much rate. Like, the idea was for 3 mana, you play this thing, they have to deal with the goblin, or you're just going to make a bunch of mana, the hand smoothing thing, and then the backside. They had to kill that later too. So it was like a negative 2-for-1 for the opponent. They had to find some way to deal with it. There really wasn't a good way to deal with it. And every single deck that wasn't hardcore aggro was playing red to play Fable the Mirror Breaker, because there was no better 3 mana card. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Absolutely insane.
Wow, our perspectives on what should or should not be banned are apparently completely like Emrakul. I get it, that I could see it. This, I don't know. I don't care if the comments come after me. This does not seem bannable to me. But so be it. So be it. I understand this being for paying 3 mana for if you get the dream and this doesn't get destroyed at all, sure. Like, you get a lot of value out of it. I just feel like there'd be enough cards to deal with it. And yeah, even if you get a card out of your opponent to deal with it, maybe you're okay with that because they could have used that on something else. So, I don't know.
I think if you had told me like a month after this card was released that it would be banned, I still wouldn't believe you. It was really after, like, it was an interesting standard because they decided to make the standard rotation go from 2 years to 3 years. So they had a year without a rotation. And when they did that, we were looking at a format where, like, every deck, there were decks that were mono white that were splashing the color red just to play this card. And it was like,
which is crazy.
Every deck had to have this card. So when they announced that there would be a ban announcement to try to shake the format up because there was no rotation, everybody knew it was going to be Fable because it was just the most played card. But it still does boggle the mind. It would be surprising to a lot of people that was banned. So I thought it was a good one for a video.
No, that's a good one for sure. Yeah.
Let's show you a green card. You haven't seen a green card.
No, we've seen, I think, everything but green and white, I believe.
And once again, I think you like text on cards, so I'm going to give you one with plenty of reading to do.
Oh my god. Okay. Questing Beast. This is a 2 and 2 green, so it's 4. All these legendaries. That should tell me whether or not these are good, I would hope. It is a beast. It's in the name, so I'd hope so. Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste. So I know Haste. Vigilance, if I recall, is if it attacks, it doesn't tap. Is that what it is?
You got it. Yep, nailed it.
And then Death Touch is if it deals damage to something, it just kills it straight up, correct?
Yep, regardless of how much it deals.
Right, so it could be 1, for all we know, and it will still kill it. Okay, so I know all the keywords for now, so that's good. Questing Beast can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. That seems interesting. Okay. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. So what does that mean exactly? Can't be prevented? Because this is something that might be Magic specific compared to Yu-Gi-Oh!
There are various spells and effects that say prevent all combat damage or prevent damage target creature would deal or prevent damage from a source of your choice. And none of those cards can be used on Questing Beast. Or if they are used that turn, like something that prevents all combat damage, Questing Beast says, nope, that doesn't work. You still take damage because this line of text is on me.
Got it. Okay. So I'm trying to I don't really think Yu-Gi-Oh! Has like an analog to that. I feel like the closest thing is there are cards that say they can't be destroyed by battle, destroyed by card effects.
But there's no trap card that says creatures don't hurt you this turn?
There is, but I'm saying there's not like an effect like this on Questing Beast that says like can't be prevented because like
a counter to that effect.
Yeah, well, because in Yu-Gi-Oh, monsters don't deal damage to each other. It's just monster attacks, which number is bigger, and then it just gets destroyed. So there's not this like because there's no health, right? So I think that's just like what's weird about Yu-Gi-Oh versus Magic with that. But okay, I understand. And then whenever Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, which it clearly can based off the other 5 effects it has, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. Whoa. Okay. I mean, obviously that's assuming they have a planeswalker.
Yep.
This is a cool card. This is neat. This is a lot. I feel like this is a lot of value for a 4 mana 4/4. It's not. I can't believe it's just a 4/4 for. I'm surprised, like with all this the text on this, that it's not like a 3/3 or something. So it kills anything it battles. It guarantees to kill it because the battle damage can't be prevented. It then also can deal that damage to a planeswalker if your opponent has it. I think that's just like if they have it, cool. If not, I don't think that's like the reason you play this card necessarily. But it's like a nice bonus, sure. I feel like based off what I'm seeing so far, I feel like you would play this even if it didn't have the Planeswalker effect. Kills anything. It can attack as soon as you play it, which is kind of interesting. That seems more of like a red. Having haste seems like just more of like a red thing generally, but I guess green stuff could have haste. And it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, which it just makes this really... Because I would say a lot of creatures that are... Especially if you drop this on like turn 4. I feel like a lot of creatures would probably have 2 or less power. So the fact that this can just get in and your opponent can't stop it... If you're getting 4 damage to the face, that's fine. And then if they can block it, whatever they can block it with is going to die, most likely. This seems really good. This seems really strong. I don't think this is bad. I do not think this is a bad card. I definitely think this is a good card. This actually seems like quite a pushed card. Is it banned? Or what was the other one? It busted. Busted is the other
busted.
one. Busted.
And you can go for a bonus point if you say a busted card is banned.
But if I have to compare it to like, Emrakul and then the mirror card, those were banned and busted.
Mm-hmm.
Is this card in that league? I don't know. I think this is an exceptional card. And so I will go out on a limb. I'm going to say this is busted, but I'm going to say it wasn't banned.
Interesting. Very
Final
interesting.
Answer. Final answer.
Okay. Very cool. I think if you asked 100 Magic players, they would say that Questing Beast is good.
Okay.
It was a very interesting design choice at the time. Obviously, green. So green is very much the creature color, right? They make a lot of creatures. And when Questing Beast came out, people were like, that is an insane amount of text on a green creature. Because for years, green has kind of been the butt of everybody's jokes as the bad color because they make a lot of cool creatures, but they just die. Like people play their removal spells and the creatures die, right? And this card is like, oh my God, it does so much everything. And what's more important is the context around Questing Beast. Questing Beast, I don't know this, but this is the way it is like assumed this got designed. They made a very quick, like 4-mana 4/4 with like vigilance and haste and death touch. And they were like, you know, you could stop right there and you'd have a decent green card.
Sure.
But at the time, like it was rare to see a green card with this much text. So you go to the next line. Questing Beast can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Why is that even a thing? Because nothing wants to block this anyway. It kills anything it touches. Why would you want to block it with something with half its power anyway, right?
It felt at odds. Yeah.
So you look at the format that this was coming into, and a recent printing was a card that a land, Field of the Dead, that makes 2/2 zombies every time you play a land. So
that's like, funny.
It was coming into a format where there were tons of zombies being created. Like there were combos you could do to make 100 zombies, and they were all 2/2s. This could come out and just smack your face anyway. The zombies couldn't touch it. So it's like, okay, maybe they looked at like the future of their format and they tacked on that line. Next line, combat damage can't be prevented. There was a deck that looped extra turn spells and cards called fogs that prevent all combat damage that would happen this turn.
Okay.
It looped these fogs so that combat damage just never happened. And that was the combo deck, and it was degenerate and hideous. It was, people absolutely hated it. And it does feel like they were like, all right, we'll just tack this line of text on Questing Beast. So if this is out there, those fogs don't work and the opponent just dies. You know, they just added that to the card.
And then,
so War of the Spark was 2 sets before Questing Beast came out. Okay. War of the Spark was the first ever Planeswalker focused set with over 30 Planeswalkers in it. So there were so many Planeswalkers legal and standard. And Planeswalkers have always been a controversial type. And they were always mythic rare. You know what I mean? Sure. So when they showed up, it wasn't normal. Like a Planeswalker was never a normal play. But then this set came out that was like all Planeswalkers all the time. And while many people enjoyed it for a while, a lot of people hated it. Death to the Planeswalkers. They were so sick of all these Planeswalkers. And it was notoriously annoying planeswalkers that had static abilities that affected the battlefield no matter what plus or minus you used, that were closer to like enchantments. Very annoying. So What did they do? They put that line of text on Questing Beast, so that Questing Beast also kills all these planeswalkers. The bizarre thing about Questing Beast, with all these kind of meta considerations added to it, by the time this card released, several of the things that this would have solved were banned already.
That's so funny. Oh my god.
They were too annoying and good, and they had already been banned. The Questing Beast showed up too late to the party, dude. So that is why, honestly, that is why I think everybody would look at this card as good. Instead of the savior, I think it was that line after line of text was tacked onto this card to make it a savior for all these things. It just turned out to be a fine mythic rare card. It saw some play. It definitely wasn't automatically in many decks. It was in a deck that won a Pro Tour. It was in a few decks that won Pro Tours, but it was never the star of the deck. It was a player in the deck.
Sure. Yeah, seems like a solid card.
There are still people who make a lot of jokes. The reason I showed it to you specifically is because there's a lot of like how much text is on Yu-Gi-Oh cards, kind of like bitching and moaning from Magic players like me. And this is the card when you talk about too much text on a Magic card. This was like one of the first ones that everyone was like, why does it have all this text? And there's a lot of memes about people are still reading Questing Beast to find out its other abilities. And
that's hilarious.
There's all this stuff.
That's hilarious. It does have 6 different effects, to be fair. That is quite a bit.
All right, I'm going to show you a white card now.
Okay. Mesa Falcon. This is what you called your followers at the beginning of the video, if I recall correctly.
Damn it, don't remember that.
This is 1 and a white for a bird. Nice looking bird. Looks like outside my window. Flying. And 1 and a white. Mesa Falcon gets +0/+1 until the end of the turn. Okay, how are you baiting me with this card? That is the first thing that runs through my mind.
Whatever do you mean?
There's your bait, because this doesn't seem good. This does not. This seems like an old card. It looks like an old card. It's probably older than I am. Why are you showing me this card? Why you showed me Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, or whatever it was called, and you're showing me this in the same video. Like, surely
that was 15 mana. This is 2 mana.
This is 2 mana, and it doesn't do anything. Why are you showing me this? Why are you showing me this card? Why would I pay 1 and a white for this to get? I guess technically, if I recall, these like mana abilities, can't you technically use them like multiple times?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not.
There's no infinite mana. You can infinitely butt pump this Falcon.
Great. It's the Falcon that flew so high it dodged everything. That's what I'm getting at here. There's no way this is good. I cannot wait for you to tell me that there's some combo that makes this card crazy, but I refuse to believe this is good. This has to be bad. Final answer. I'm not even going to waste my time on this.
What if I told you that this card saw play in a Pro Tour?
As like, did someone lose a bet?
A pro player ran 4 of this card in their deck. That's in standard.
Were they inebriated? Were they of sane mind? I mean, maybe there's something. There has
arguable.
To be like, the only reason I could think that this would be like somewhat viable is that because it has flying and because it's cheap, and maybe because it has the ability to like make it so it can't die, that there's some way that it can just like hit over a bunch of stuff and just somehow kill someone. But go ahead, enlighten me as to why Mesa Falcon was played in a Pro Tour at 4 copies.
Sure, I will.
Go ahead.
If you showed Mesa Falcon to 100 Magic players, they would probably all agree that it is bad.
Thank God. Okay.
And the player who played it in the Pro Tour was me.
Okay, so why did you play this in your deck in the Pro Tour?
Because so the story goes that this was, not only was this the first Pro Tour ever in 1996.
Okay.
This was my first tournament ever
Wow. Okay.
And yes, my first tournament ever was a Pro Tour. And there was a rule back then that your deck had to contain 5 cards from each legal set at the time.
Interesting.
That you had, and this was from a set called Homelands.
Okay.
And it was one of the only, my deck was white and black. It was one of the only Homelands cards I owned that fit my colors and was actually better than some of the competition. I'm not kidding. That's how Homelands is notoriously one of the worst sets ever made. Ever.
Okay.
And not only did I not want to buy it or open it, but I also was like, what do I do here? There were a lot of flyers in the format.
Okay.
My home meta was centered around a card called Earthquake that my sister and I both like to play that dealt damage to non-flying creatures. It would often kill all non-flying creatures. So flying was definitely valued to not flying. And then there were a number of other very good flying creatures in the format, and the idea of even just getting to block them sometimes seemed more appetizing than the other options I found. And I am 100% sure I'm the only person in the history of time to play Mesa Falcon in a constructed Pro Tour. And I am sure it was wrong. But here we are. And I honestly just kept that a secret. I was too ashamed to even tell anybody. It was a Rarin video that pulled it out of me. And that is why they are the Mesa Falcon gang. And now you are a part of the lore.
That's awesome. That's a cool story, though. I think that's actually better than if there was some dumb degenerate combo that this somehow enabled. Because Yu-Gi-Oh, don't get me wrong, Yu-Gi-Oh has plenty of cards that like you look at it and like this card's innocuous and then ended up resulting in like a million FTK decks. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I like your story a lot better. I think that's the good conclusion to that.
Anybody watching this who hasn't watched me before, maybe coming for your content, is doing the same thing of like, what the hell is wrong with this card? And everybody who knows the story in my comments was probably losing it while you were trying to analyze how this could ever be good. Because like, I guess it was 13-year-old me. 13-year-old me wanted to believe in Mesa Falcon. But you know what? I'll show you a bird that might be better than Mesa Falcon.
Okay, I'm down.
This is your last card, by the way.
Oh, God. Isn't this the thing in all the thumbnails right now? Okay. Nadu Winged Wisdom.
What are you looking at magic thumbnails for?
I don't look. They show up in my YouTube recommended because the algorithm is like, oh, you like card games. Here are some other popular things that people are probably complaining about. Okay, so this is going to go well. 1 and a green and a blue. It is a 3/4 with flying. That actually seems quite well statted for just a 3 cost. It is dual type, so I mean, maybe the stats on that are better, but I doubt that's probably why anyone cared about this card. Flying, I think I said that. Creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, whenever this creature becomes a target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it onto your battlefield. Okay, that sounds good. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. This ability triggers only twice each turn. Creatures you can... Okay, I need to read this again. This is worded... I don't know why this is like... The way Magic cards are worded versus Yu-Gi-Oh cards is very different, so I think it's just like a comprehension thing at this point. Okay. Creatures you control. All creatures. Have, quote, so all creatures have, in the quotes, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. Okay, so I can go play this and then play something that targets this, because I imagine you're not letting your opponent, like, your opponent would never manually trigger this unless they need to kill it. That's the only thing I can think of. But anyway, you would probably have some card that can work with this to trigger that yourself.
Sure. Book of Moon it.
Yeah, exactly. See, you know cards. You know cards.
Yeah, I know Book of Moon now.
You do. this ability triggers only twice each turn. So in my mind, you need to also pay to... This isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything's not free. So you have to pay to play cards to target Nadu. So if I play this on 3... you don't even have to play this on 3. If you have something that is like... I'm trying to think. Like, maybe you played on 4 or 5, depending on, like, what the card is. Depends if it costs, like, 1 or something. You could play this on, like, 3, and then play something that would target this to trigger the effect. And if there's some... There might be some other way to, like, replicate that or get it so you can do the ability twice. Okay. I mean, that seems good. I mean, it's a lot of value, right? You target it, it gives you a land. It doesn't... The land, I just realized, doesn't even come in untapped. That's kind of crazy. Okay. Or tapped, sorry. That's what I meant. It doesn't come in tapped. So you can actually use the land.
It enters untapped. You can use the land. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, if you play this on 3, or let's say you play it on 4, because, you know, 0-cost cards in Magic apparently are near and far between, or few and far between. But you go, play this on 4, let's say, for 3. You play a 1-cost thing that targets this. If you hit a land, then if you have, like, another 1-cost thing that targets it, you can get both abilities. Maybe you get another land, maybe you get a thing that goes to your hand. That's, like, decent value. And then if this sticks around, if you can keep doing stuff like that, okay. What am I missing here? Why would this be in YouTube thumbnails? Why would this... Are Magic players just a bunch of babies with this card? Why would this be here?
Are Magic players a bunch of babies? Sound off in the comments.
Creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, like, it seems good, like, just on the surface, but, like, I think I'm missing something. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal a top card. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. Do this twice. Oh. Okay. I think I figured out what I have been missing this whole time. I think I figured it out. Okay.
What is it? What you got?
I think I have been overlooking the fact that the first few words of this card that says creatures you control. I think in my mind, I was thinking that, like, just only applies to Nadu. But if Nadu hits another creature off of, like, one activation of this, that creature also has all of this inherited text within the quotation marks, which means it also has the ability to, like, reveal the top card and do all this stuff. Am I understanding that correctly?
If it becomes targeted up to 2 times a turn, that's
okay.
Right.
I take back what I said. I think I understand why this card's busted now. I am sure there's some card. There's probably some... This is what happens in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Okay. What happens is they release a card like this, and then people go digging in their bulk box, and they find some card that hasn't seen play since, like, the early 2000s that happens to combo with a card that they just printed since Yu-Gi-Oh's an eternal format. And they're just like, yeah, this just, like, has, like, some infinite combo, essentially. So I'm going to assume that there is a old card that maybe they didn't realize when they printed this card. It's probably something that's, like, never seen play, ever, if I had to guess. They probably didn't realize this card existed. And then, as a result, the player base, because they're smarter than everyone, they're like, all right, we're going to break this card into oblivion. So let's assume there is some card that... I'm trying to, like, I don't know Magic card design. I'm trying to think. There's probably some card that costs, like, 0 or 1 or 2, I'd imagine, that is something that's, like, an enchantment or something that, like, once per turn you can, like, target something and then... Or not even once per turn. It's just, like, you can just, like, do something to, like, target that. And then you play Nadu on 3... And then you just start going off. Like, you go, Nadu, use the thing, target the Nadu, hope to hit a monster, or creature, excuse me. Hope to hit a creature. You hit another creature. You can still do that thing again to Nadu at least one other time. But then you had a creature that you can also start doing it to. And then it just becomes the casino. And you're just swimming in lands and creatures. That to me seems like how this can get out of hand. Can you do all of that in Magic? I don't know. That seems like a Yu-Gi-Oh thing to me. Like this, in my head, I think as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, I've seen how our game does stuff like that, and it's actually in modern Yu-Gi-Oh quite common. So I don't think that's inconceivable as a Yu-Gi-Oh player. You guys have resources. You guys actually have to pay things to play stuff. So I don't know the card pool to know if those cards exist. That would be my best guess. If those cards do exist, I will say that this is busted. If they don't exist, then I think this card is just good. It's a lot of good value. I think it would be good. But that would be my Yu-Gi-Oh brain is thoroughly enjoying the way this card is designed. So I'm going to go with it's busted. Final answer.
Yay, free stuff. Do you want to take a shot on whether or not it's banned?
Oh,
I didn't mention this is printed directly into Modern.
Okay. Is it banned?
And no reading YouTube thumbnails.
No, I'm not. I swear. I'm just staring into the card in its glorious artwork. I feel like if people are complaining about it, it's not. So I might be a bit biased there. But like, I don't know how old those videos are. In all fairness, like they could have had a ban list and they could have banned this card. By Magic standards and what I know about Magic, if the play pattern goes in the busted camp that I'm seeing how this could potentially just get absolutely completely out of hand, by Magic standards, I think this card should be banned. So I would hope it's banned. At least since whenever those videos went up, I would hope it's banned based off of that. So I'm going to go with hopefully.
Oh, I'm about to blow your mind.
Oh, great. That's always how we love starting off this. Yeah, okay.
Imagine if I just told you this card was bad.
I would say you're actually just lying to me. There's no I can't see this card being bad. This card at bare minimum, if there's no combo shenanigans, this card seems it would be just like decent if it didn't have the fact that everything gains the ability.
Let's go into your bulk box. Let's say this card popped out of it.
Okay, Shuko. This is a 1-mana artifact. Equipped creature gets +1/+0. Equips. There you go. I'm assuming an artifact equipping to a creature targets it.
Yep.
Okay, there you go.
It targets it.
Yep. The dream lives. The dream lives. Yep. Okay.
1 mana, infinite targets for 0, for nothing. Yep, there it is.
I've never seen this card. I haven't seen a lot of these cards. To be fair, the only reason I've seen Nadu is because of the thumbnails. I haven't seen anything else besides that. But I've never seen this card or like a majority of the other cards we've seen here. And yep, there we go. There's your bulk card. I bet this card costs like $40 now or some insane amount.
This card went from 98 cents to a high of $32.
That is... That sounds like Yu-Gi-Oh! If I've ever heard it.
Yep. You sure identified that particular, what we'll call it a play pattern.
I almost missed it though, because I almost overlooked the fact that it says all creatures. So like, I was about to say that it's good.
I blame YouTube thumbnails.
I blame the YouTube algorithm.
No card has had that many thumbnails without being busted. But as far as is this banned? This card, released in May of this year.
Okay, so it's relatively
went on.
Then.
Yep. That's why you've seen all those thumbnails. Went on to dominate the very first pro event that used it, which was in the end of June. Also pretty recently. It was 6 of the top 8 decks. It was something like 15 of the top 20. Something crazy. It is incredibly obnoxious to play against and incredibly boring to watch. All right? Incredibly. Because if you think of the pattern, every single time you use the Shuko or some other ability to target the Nadu, you have to look at your top card. You have to pause and process if it's a land or a creature. You put it onto the battlefield if it's a land. You put the other card types into your hand, and then you do it again. And you have to keep track through the entire experience. Was that twice?
Yeah.
Did we do it once? Did we do it twice? Which creature has had it done twice? And you have to like basically manually process your deck with this combo. And the way it often results is you just have your whole deck on the battlefield. But you still often have to pass to your opponent and be like, yeah, can you do anything about that? I've drawn 1 million cards. I've put out my whole library. You still have to like somehow win the game, which usually just takes, which honestly is just wait a turn because they probably can't match you. And then on your turn, you win. But it's incredibly obnoxious. It is fun to play. I will give it that. When you are the Nadu player, it's exciting because it's got all that disgusting RNG element of just dirtling with yourself. It tickles a certain part of people's brains. But people hate this card. They hate playing against this card. And it's the rare instance of a card that won the Pro Tour, dominated the Pro Tour. And then the price just started going down.
Oh, because people were afraid it was going to get banned.
And down. And the card has done nothing but go down for the last 2 months. And there is currently an RCQ season, which means people are playing competitive tournaments in the modern format where Nadu is by a mile the most overpowered deck. This card is still not banned.
That's unbelievable.
This card is still not banned.
I was going to say it's unbelievable, but I also get it because if Wizards just released this set and they want to like sell the set, like it's kind of a hard ask for them to ban the best card and the reason for people to buy the set. I'm just saying,
but it wouldn't be unheard of. Wizards has done this with nearly every Modern Horizons set. They released it. There was a best card that was by far the best. And after it did its thing for a month, they banned it. After it showed that it dominated the Pro Tour, it banned it. A great example is a card named Hogak from the Modern Horizons set before this, printed directly into Modern. They banned some of the enablers for Hogak before the Pro Tour because it already looked so busted. It still dominated the Pro Tour, and then they banned Hogak. They haven't done shit tonight.
So they haven't banned any of the other they haven't banned like Shuko or anything?
It would cost them almost nothing to ban Shuko.
That's
Shuko,
hilarious.
Nobody cares about Shuko. Shuko was a nothing burger before. It's a very rare ability. Equip for 0 is a very rare ability. Not many cards have it. If you banned it, you would cut a huge part of the combo out. They didn't ban that. How about Nadu itself? The card that everybody's afraid to buy because they're so sure it'll get banned. Didn't ban that either. Nadu is still flapping as of right now. I don't know when this will come out. Maybe it will be banned by the time this video comes out. Knowing me, it will be. Right now, at the time we record this, Nadu is out there flapping, pissing off Modern players and Brawl players everywhere. And it's unbelievable.
I need to go and watch some of those videos then, because I imagine some of them probably show like footage from the Pro Tour of this deck being played, or even if it's not the Pro Tour, like even if it's just them playing it, like either in person or online or something. But if this plays out in a similar way to how I envision it playing out, do I have good news for you, because Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, this is going to blow your mind. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh is the best analog here. If you want to know what Modern Yu-Gi-Oh is like, when I showed you cards, we were taking it slow. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh is probably the equivalent of 2 Nadu players playing against each other, and that's like every match you play.
Hey, so your audience, we've come to Magic. We've got Nadu cookies, okay? And by the way, here's a link to my Nadu video.
Oh, perfect.
Is that the thumbnail you saw?
No, I just saw like a bunch of people were just like, they had pictures of it, and they were just doing the typical YouTube like broken band, like just like this, except it wasn't, you dressed as Nadu. All that. Is that gonna be your cosplay for when you go to the next Magic convention?
That's just something I like to wear. That's just how I go out now.
I dig it. I dig it.
Well, thank you for checking out the Magic cards. Did you have a good time?
This was fun. This was really interesting to see like how just like the power levels of our two games are so different, especially just since I know mechanically how to play this game, but in terms of evaluating what makes a broken card versus a good card versus a bad card, our scales I feel like are just in different dimensions. To be honest, it's crazy.
I don't know, man. You kind of crushed this one. I'm a little mad. I'm going to have to do better next time.
I don't know if I crushed it. I feel like I got like maybe half of them.
Yeah, I feel like you crushed it. I feel like you crushed it. I'm coming for blood next time. I'm going to show you some cards that will really blow your Yu-Gi-Oh mind out.
Great. Can't wait to see that.